Welcome everyone to this webinar on the Progressing National SDG Implementation Report, an annual report which is prepared by a coalition of civil society groups all around the world. This is a report that is tied very closely to the SDGs and the follow-up of the SDGs. We're now 10 years in to the SDGs. If we look back over those 10 years, it's been quite a dramatic period, and many things are changing at the moment. So it hasn't been an easy year to reflect on the SDGs, and in particular on the voluntary national reviews. But we aim to give you some insights into how the voluntary national reviews have evolved and how this year, or the past year, 2024, how the process was delivered and what some of the key trends were in terms of the implementation and the follow-up of the SDGs. We'll be hearing from a number of different colleagues, and we look forward to your opportunity to ask questions and to share your insights as well with many of those who are here today. So before we start, I just want to thank all of our partners. This is a joint initiative between Action for Sustainable Development, where I'm the coordinator, Ollie Henman, but also we work very closely with BOND, which is the UK umbrella body for NGOs, which started this process back in 2016, with Cooperation Canada, who have also hosted the progressing reports over a number of years, as well as with other key networks, including our good friends at Forus, Save the Children, Sightsavers, and also IISD. So it's a real collaboration, and we really appreciate all of the mutual learning and shared work that we put in every year. And thank you again to all of those who have done their own national reporting, because it's really crucial that we understand not just what the governments are saying, but what civil society groups are saying at the national level in the VNRs. So moving on, we can now set out the agenda for today. So I'm giving the opening at the moment, and we'll very shortly hear from our key speaker to kick things off from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Alexandra Pleshko, who we are very, very grateful to hear her views today, and also for her very strong support during the HLPF in New York, particularly for civil society groups coming from VNR countries, to ensure that we have that vigilance and that support from the UN system to make sure that all voices can be heard equitably. We'll then hear from the report itself, from those who drafted the report, to my colleague Nicolas and Wangu, who have both worked extremely hard over a number of months to pull this report together. And then, of course, we'll hear from a number of colleagues from different VNR countries from 2024. And finally, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions and to share your thoughts. So let me pass now to Alexandra. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Oli, and greetings to everyone in this online space. First, sincere thanks, of course, to the organizers for inviting me to share a few thoughts on the HLPF and VNRs. The UN Human Rights Office that I work for has been following the HLPF and VNRs from its inception. And when we think about those times, I remember the uncertainty and even a certain skepticism as to whether states will accept another, albeit voluntary, reporting process, right? And then we fast forward to today, we can see some pretty impressive numbers. Over 400 VNRs will have been presented by this July. 190 countries have presented at least one report. There's usually more interest in presenting VNRs than there are spaces available at the HLPF every year. And in fact, VNRs are often referred to as one of the successes of the 2030 agenda. However, while the take-up of the VNRs is good and shows political will, the numbers alone don't give a full picture. And we need to sort of, so to speak, look behind the curtain of the VNRs. And this is why analysis like the one presented today, I think, are so very valuable. Briefly, please allow me to share 4 short reflections. First, Meaningful participation of civil society in VNRs and the preparation of spotlight reports is really essential. And one does not exclude the other, as we sometimes hear. As an implementing partner, civil society is so well placed to help define key challenges, to elaborate tailored solutions, but still we see it's too often unable to do so meaningfully. And I stress meaningful as we certainly see and have seen an increase in stakeholder consultations. But when we look at whether they actually help adjust and improve development policies, we see that there certainly still is a way to go. My second point is that safe participation is really the precondition of meaningful engagement. Yet I'm sure it will come as no news to this audience that civic space is shrinking in many countries globally, and human rights and environmental defenders, sustainable development advocates often face pressures or even worse. And in this context, I really want to flag that OHCHR has the mandate to lead UN's efforts on intimidation and reprisals against those who cooperate with the UN. And as part of this work, we publish an annual report which has previously flagged HLPF, including the VNR process, as a forum of concern. So that's certainly something that we are keeping a close eye on. And we have dedicated experts who document allegations, cases, and trends, publish findings. They develop and provide guidance. They can tap into support tools such as referrals, depending on the situation, and you are certainly able to reach them confidentially. Perhaps I will place some more information and relevant links in the chat, and we really hope to keep in touch on this, particularly around the HLPF and the VNRs. My third point is that civil society can really play a role in helping enhance the analytical quality of VNRs, because countries have been moving away from quote unquote VNRs as beauty contests, which is a phrase we've heard a lot in the early days of VNRs. But again, there is certainly room for improvement in that regard as well. And we're talking, or I'm talking about helping identify root causes, systemic barriers to inequalities, pushing for identification of all marginalized population groups in a country beyond those who are usually included in the VNRs, helping address data gaps. That's just a few immediate concrete roles that come to mind. And whether we're talking about generating citizen-driven data or advocating for including and engaging overlooked groups, if civil society has a seat at the VNR table, we certainly see that progress can be both faster and also more equitable. And my fourth and last point is that VNRs should really develop a vision of priority actions going forward, including on human rights. Human rights and the 2030 Agenda are interconnected, they're mutually reinforcing, yet VNRs often we see confined human rights reflections to one or at best a few SDGs. It tends to be SDG 16, right? To the social dimension of sustainable development or to the principle of leaving no one behind. But the 2030 Agenda is very clear. All SDGs aim to realize all human rights, and human rights are obligations that equally apply to the economic and environmental dimensions of sustainable development, and those should not be human rights free zones. And civil society certainly remains a very much valued ally we have in advocating for integrated approaches that advance both achieving SDGs while fulfilling human rights. And in the current context of pushback on human rights and a little bit more limited, but still pushback on the 2030 Agenda itself, I think it's more important than ever that we join hands and hold the line. As I suspect my time is running up, I will conclude just by noting that our office is currently inviting inputs to a report on such integrated approaches, and I will also place a relevant link in the chat, and we certainly very much hope to hear from you identifying good practices and also identifying gaps that still need to be addressed. So thank you so much Oli, colleagues, and looking forward to hearing more about the report. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alexandra. It's really wonderful to have you with us and that strong commitment that you outlined from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And I would urge everyone who's on this call now or who's watching it afterwards to fill in the survey that was mentioned from OHCHR. This is a great opportunity to give your thoughts on how to better integrate the SDGs with human rights. So we'll make sure that that link is shared also through the follow-up email for those who may not be on the call, to make sure that you have the opportunity to share your views on how to make those better opportunities for integration. So thank you again, and we hope to continue to work closely with you as we gear up towards this year's HLPF. So now to take us through the report, we'll be hearing first from my colleague Nicolas and also from Wangu, who many of you will see on the call, and we look forward to hearing about the report. Nicolas, over to you.
Thank you, Ali, and hi everyone. I'm Nicolas Sautejeau. As Oli said, I've been co-compiling and co-editing the Progressing SDG Implementation report along with my colleague Wangu and Oli also since 2022. And in order to give you to introduce you to this 9th edition of the report and give you a little bit of the background, regarding its nature and methodology, you have to know that the Progressing SDG Implementation Report has been developed and published by a group of civil society networks and international NGOs every year since 2016. The report is based on collecting data and analyzing that data from all available VNR reports each year, and based on an analytical framework that actually encompasses 100 plus variables that cover the different dimensions that make the SDG implementation process. So since 2023, the report has actually been very much streamlined in order to provide a sharper and more focused analysis than in previous years. And this year in 2024, the analysis was based on 36 reports, of which 35 were full VNRs and 1 was a set of main messages. And one key element of the report that should be mentioned is that it includes CSO views through fact-book checks in order to verify the different assertions that are made by governments in the official reports, and hopefully try to situate VNRs within the broader socio-political context in which SDG implementation actually takes place, and hopefully also bring an element of accountability into the review process. Next slide, please, Oli. So these are the 3 key dimensions that I covered by the analytical framework of the report. So quickly, the first one, of course, is about governance and institutional mechanisms for SDG implementation, in which we look into the nature, the scope of mandate, the level of inclusiveness, and of efficacy of SDG oversight bodies as they are described in the VNRs. Of course, this is a section, given that it touches on participation, that is where a lot of CSO views are brought into light in order to verify whether these oversight bodies actually exist on the ground and whether they are really inclusive and effective in their work. The other key dimension is policies for SDG implementation, where we look into how the SDGs are integrated within policy and planning frameworks, but also whether countries conduct gap analysis and to what extent, the issue of budgeting and costing of the SDG implementation, data coverage, but also policy coherence in order to try to to look into how countries are approaching policy coherence and to what extent they actually adapt their institutional settings in order to be as consistent and coherent as possible in their approach to SDG implementation. And lastly, we have the implementing the SDGs in partnership dimension, which actually covers how implementation is actually practiced on the ground through localization, to analyzing challenges and best practices brought by governments, but also with a specific focus on policies that are linked to Leave No One Behind and how historically marginalized communities in each country are approached through policy. Next slide, please, Ali. Thank you. So regarding the first key dimension that I mentioned, which is governance and institutional mechanisms dimension, a key data point that we should share with you is that in this year, I mean, in 2024, 66% of countries actually reported that they have established a new SDG coordinating institution. And when we say new, it means that these are institutions that were actually created since 2015, specifically for the oversight of the SDG implementation process. And this 2/3 proportion is basically a constant each year. So it does show that there is some level of institutional innovation that has been brought by the SDG implementation process, at least on paper. But interestingly, in 2024, only 9 countries said to have placed leadership of these SDG governance bodies at the highest political level. That is the head of government or head of state level, which is a marked difference with previous years, as it head of government or state tended to be the place for leadership within the SDG governance mechanisms, but this year there was a marked reduction in that. Of course, it's just 1 year, so it's not easy to really see it as a trend, but if it's confirmed, it would possibly imply that maybe the SDGs are reducing their political salience, but also these SDG oversight bodies have a diminished capacity in order to navigate cross-sectoral trade-offs and also try to leverage cross-sectoral synergies also. Next slide, please, Oli. So another key data point for the governance dimension is that in 2024, 63% of countries characterized their SDG institutional arrangement as multi-stakeholder in nature, which is actually a marked increase from 2023, when only 38% of countries said to have created a multi-stakeholder institutional arrangement for SDG implementation oversight. This, of course, from the CSO views that we were able to bring into the report for this year, most of these spaces do exist in reality. But, for example, in Kenya and in Zimbabwe, civil society is indeed brought into the governance body by being co-chair of the governance body. But in most cases, and it's also the case in Kenya and Zimbabwe, these governance bodies are rarely convened as multi-stakeholder spaces. And when they are, they tend to have rather limited mandates or unclear mandates. So the picture isn't as clear as that data point would imply at first sight. Next slide, please, Oli. So regarding the second dimensions, which is the policy dimension for SDG implementation, a key data point is that 91% of countries in 2024 said to have woven the SDGs into their national policy framework or the planning frameworks. But a key point in this regarding that data is that most countries don't really provide much detail regarding the political influence that these planning frameworks actually have within policy making and decision making practices. And they rarely also provide details on how these planning frameworks were actually formulated, especially regarding participation, stakeholder engagement within the formulation of these planning frameworks. The exception in 2024 is Brazil, where actually there was a very broad consultation process that was organized in order to formulate the pluriannual plan. But in general, countries don't provide much information regarding how these planning frameworks came to light and how the SDGs were actually integrated in a participatory way. Regarding the budgetary dimension, it has to be said that very few countries actually provide very detailed data regarding how they aligned the SDGs to their national budgets. But there are some countries that mention some degree of SDG alignment, like Mexico, which cites an 83% and Azerbaijan 82%, but it's very, of course, given its self-reporting, it's not easy to verify to what extent that is true. And there are other countries like Namibia and Sierra Leone that are developing integrated national financing framework in order to map the entire set of sources for finance the SDGs. But overall, regarding the budgetary dimension, has to be said there is a persistent gap in VNRs, which implies also some kind of gap between ambition and funding. And another very marked institutional challenge has to do with policy coherence, because in 2024, and it also the case in previous years, only 51% mentioned to have some kind of policy coherence framework. But details regarding how policy interactions are actually mapped, how cross-sectoral collaboration is actually fostered through specific institutional setups, for example. It's it's a kind of information that it's very rarely shared within the VNRs. So that's a key institutional gap that is still very much ongoing. Next slide, please, Ollie. Thank you. So regarding the SDG review process, the SDG monitoring process, a positive element in 2024 is that there is a marked presence of civil society, non-state actor engagement within the VNR processes through an array of consultations that take place before, during, and after the VNR process. So that's a practice that has been indeed increasing throughout the years. And specifically, we can name some specific examples, like, for example, in Armenia, there was a 3-round cycle where civil society was able to participate before, during, and after the creation of the VNR. In Kenya, there was a zero graft workshop that was organized in order for civil society to contribute, keep data points, but also perceptions regarding SDG implementation and validate the official report. In Vanuatu, there was an open draft process where non-state actors were able to participate quite extensively. So there are some very positive signs regarding that. But regarding the data picture, only 15% of countries indicate having access to disaggregated data for most of the VNR sections. So that's a very, very key gap that is still very much present in most countries, and especially in countries in the global south, in order to really have evidence-based baseline and gap analysis in order to really measure how the country, where the country stands, and how progress is being made towards the goals. Regarding the data picture, though, a positive element also in 2024 VNRs is that 100% of the countries actually cited some type of action to strengthen national statistical capacity, which is up from 85% in 2023, which signals some kind of momentum regarding data strengthening in most countries, although, of course, the idea would have to be to properly resource these plans in order to really create and establish reliable open data sources for evidence-based policy making. Next slide, please, Oli. So regarding the third dimension, which is the implementing practices around SDGs implementation, it has to be said that in 2024, countries started introducing acceleration plans in their VNRs, following from the SDG summit in 2023, where the idea of acceleration plans were introduced. And so most countries, 88% of them, as you can see in 2024, did present some type of SDG acceleration plans, which range from policy-focused acceleration plans and or plans that try to leverage specific means of implementation boosters or bottleneck solvers, if you will. That said, these acceleration plans that are presented in the VNRs are rarely detailed in how they came to light, how they were formulated. There is very scant information regarding that. And also, it has to be said that most acceleration plans seems to be retrofitting of existing national development plans, reprioritization exercises, if you will, with very little consultation, seemingly, or very little consensus-based processes around them. And also from the CSO views that we were able to bring into the report around these acceleration plans have been very weakly communicated, if they have been communicated at all at the national level. So there's still a lot of unclear elements regarding the acceleration plans, these acceleration plans, but it's still positive as a tool that these are starting to be employed as a tool, at least. There are some interesting examples regarding acceleration plans in the VNRs, like, for example, the multi-stakeholder compact in Costa Rica that tried to really construct genuine partnerships around SDG implementation. Also some models that try to very much localized SDG implementation, like Uganda's Parish Development Model. Other integrated approaches to planning, where from Namibia and Oman, for example, where their acceleration plans really try to integrate the social, economic, environmental, and governance dimension in a very, very detailed way. And also other countries like Mexico that try to provide integrated approaches through at program level in order to integrate social, socioeconomic, and environmental elements into different programs. But of course, and especially in countries in the global south, these plans tend to be weakly resourced. So it remains to be seen to what extent they will be actually implemented. And regarding the means of implementation levers for acceleration, the most commonly cited ones are capacity building and institutional data system strengthening. Try to find new innovative ways to finance SDG implementations, like, for example, SDG or climate bonds, diaspora bonds, debt or climate swaps, etc. And also digital transformation strategies in order to improve connectivity and service delivery. Those are the most commonly cited acceleration levers. Next slide, please. Yeah, so regarding the leave no one behind element, it has to be said, and this has been common for a few years now. Most VNR reports mention the leave no one behind principle, at least rhetorically, within their VNRs. But when we look a little bit more into details, the picture isn't as clear because only 29% of reports actually said to have run a baseline study in order to really identify who is being left behind in the development process at national level and subnational level, which is a reduction from 2023. And this, of course, is based on persistent data gaps that are still ongoing in most countries, especially in the global south. Regarding which populations are actually identified as being left behind, the most commonly cited are women and girls, persons with disabilities, and children and youth. And this is a constant every year in VNRs. These are the three most commonly cited groups. But indigenous people and ethnic groups, LGBTQI plus communities seem to be afterthought in most countries still, and they still seem to be institutional blind spots regarding policymaking in most countries. One positive aspect, though, in 2024 VNRs regarding leaving one behind is that tackling inequalities is at least rhetorically mentioned in every agenda, as 97% of countries now report at least one policy aimed at shrinking social economic gaps. Policies that range from rights-based social protection, progressive fiscal reforms, investment in human development, like in education, vocational training, etc. So that's at least as policy level, it's an interesting and positive development. Next slide, please, Oli. Yeah, so this is the graph that actually illustrates what I was saying regarding the type of population of groups that are actually identified as being left behind in development processes. As you can see, children, youth, people with disabilities, and women and girls are the most commonly cited groups, which is consistent year on year. And ethnic groups, indigenous people, sexually diverse groups are typically less identified as being left behind because seemingly of ideological or even religious reasons. Next slide, please, Oli. So regarding the localization element, the picture is relatively positive. As you can see, 75% provided some kind of level of information on efforts to localize the SDGs. And given that around 2/3 of all SDGs sit squarely within subnational mandates, it's particularly important. And there is specifically, there's a very pronounced push in order to provide localization handbooks, programs, workshops, etc., in order to really try to bring comprehensive localized implementation in most countries. And as you can see, there's also an uptick regarding voluntary local reports, as 33% of countries in 2024 conducted some kind of VLR in their countries. And also 60% of reports mentioned multi-stakeholder engagement at the local level, but mostly at project level. So not through an overarching analysis, but still it's still an interesting development and positive in 2024 VNRs. Next slide, please, Oli. And so regarding civic space element, it has to be said that it was rather positive that 71% of 2024 reports actually discussed civic space condition at some level and to some extent, many citing legal or institutional reforms like access to information laws, anti-corruption institutions and laws, electoral reforms in order to democratize countries, etc. But implementation and enforcement still seems rather slow and uneven in most countries. And regarding the final reflections, we're back to civic space. Okay, so yeah, there are some countries like Armenia, for example, and Namibia that cite some positive standing within independent indexes. There are, though, self-reported, they rely on government narratives. So we were able to confirm with the civil society in Armenia, for example, that indeed the government there is trying to make headways into more participatory forms of governance, more transparency, anti-corruption project laws and frameworks, etc. But only partially confirmed, because especially regarding anti-corruption, there's still very weak enforcement of anti-corruption laws, and also regarding the participation element, participation is still very not very substantive, let's say, within policymaking process still, although some efforts are being made in that regard. And when we cross-reference the civic space element with the governance element of the SDG implementation process, we can see that indeed, although some institutional headways have been made, there's also a lack of resourcing and substantive participation in most spaces. So regarding the final reflection, what we can say is that since 2016, there have been more than 300 VNRs already tabled. 100 spotlight reports from civil society have been developed. So taken together, all these represent, we could say, an unparalleled repository of data and insight into the SDG implementation process. Yet the two streams, the official stream and the non-state actor stream, they rarely talk to each other. They rarely interact, really. But if governments actually systematically address CSO findings, the VNR process could evolve into a more periodic, into a kind of real-time dashboard where equity blind spot and could be pinpointed, and solutions could be crowdsourced more effectively into genuine partnerships. But with 5 years left, VNRs should shift from, in order to reach this, VNRs should shift from being only descriptive documents or mostly descriptive documents in order to move into more in-depth assessment of, as Alexandra said, like key bottlenecks, key gaps that are still hindering SDG implementation, and try to discuss actionable options and solutions to these institutional policy bottlenecks, map more effectively who is still excluded and how, and try to propose more tangible, integrated, and costed solution in order to address that. One way that for the global process to contribute to this would be for the UN to actually try to establish an annual commitment tracker, which would be based on the acceleration plans that countries could introduce in order to really be able to measure progress more in a more tangible and an easier way. So thank you very much. I think Wangu will be able to expand on these points, especially in light of the current global context. So Wangu, up to you.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Thanks for doing all the heavy lifting. I'm left with just one slide to present, and I'm very happy about that. But lovely to see everybody. And as you see, I'm reflecting more generally now, more broadly than just the report itself. It's actually the second time I've worked on this report. And this year, what was really striking was the disconnect. You know, as we were writing this report and talking about what happened in 2024, we know what has been happening at the global level. There's been such dramatic shifts, you know, with the US, you know, with the war in Gaza and with many other issues. Of course, we've had that before with the pandemic, but in this case, I think when you're really looking at multilateralism itself almost being under attack, then you feel as you write this report and try and think, how can countries share lessons and learn together, that you feel you're just stuck, you know, you're coming up against a big wall. And that also could be seen very clearly last year at the Summit of the Future, where really the issue of multilateralism was front and center. And it became very clear even there, despite the fact that countries want to move to a more sort of equal power relationship at the global level, there's so much pushback and inertia that in terms of really moving forward as a global community, that remains a real issue. So, and we know again now what's happening with the UN 80 discussions, you know, also very difficult, you know, a lot of funding shrinking and so on and so forth. So I think against that context, what do you do as civil society? What are the openings? What are the entry points? I think Alexandra in her opening remarks mentioned about CSOs bringing analytical strength to these voluntary national reviews. One of the clear examples of that last year was Brazil, because as you know, Brazil had been out of the loop for a long time, and we have a colleague from Brazil who will give a bit more information. But I think that really struck me that despite the fact that the government had not been participating in the SDG reviews for a while, CSOs continue to do that and to do their annual reports. And when the new government came in, they basically used the CSO reports as the entry point for starting the new planning again. So I don't want to steal your thunder, but I just thought that was a really good example. And, you know, so clearly CSOs are doing much more than just advocating or saying, give us more space. They are actually stepping into spaces. They are providing clear results, clear solutions. You know, they are really rallying communities. They are flagging who's being left behind and so on and so forth. All the things that CSOs do well. So I think really what's needed is in a much more systematic way to incorporate this. You know, at the moment, the CSO spotlight reports and other inputs are still sort of at the mercy of their governments, you know, whether they're going to be included in the VNR report or not. So maybe there is a case for this to be sort of more systematically included at the global level, at the DESA level, so that then these reports can be also discussed by governments. But we also know that there's a risk as well with at national level when CSOs maybe become too visible. I mean, there can also be pushback at that level. So I think, again, one of the key strategies and one of the chapters in the VNR review that we do is always about multi-stakeholder partnerships. So I think more and more moving towards this multi-stakeholder approach, you know, where it's not just a CSO in the lead, but then where you have a whole cross-section of government and private sector and academia is a really useful approach. And we've seen in some countries, actually, some of these multi-stakeholder partnerships for the SDGs are even led by CSOs. So I think the more you would go towards that way of working, I think it means that also not only are resources better utilized, there's much more scrutiny and accountability, ideally, but then also I think then every stakeholder takes their rightful place in working together. And I guess I cannot conclude without mentioning the international discussions now around financing and the meeting coming up in Spain at the end of the month, the fourth international financing, forget the full name, FFD, Financing for International Development. I think more and more, I think this is where the agenda has to be strengthened about funding, that ensuring that funding is really scaled up in terms of also funding multi-stakeholder partnerships, but also recognizing the role that CSOs and other non-state actors play, especially at the subnational and the local levels, and that really should be embedded within like national funding and other flows. So I think I would leave it at that and just state again that it's just incredible to see how vocal, but not only how vocal, but also how substantive and analytical and strategic CSOs are becoming in terms of the VNRs. And even like in New York at the high-level political forum, in terms of the VNR labs that also take place side by side with the actual event. And I think we just want to see more and more of that happening, because I think it's really the way to go. It's a future. So I'll leave it at that, because more qualified CSO representatives will be speaking after this. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Wangu, and thank you for all the hard work that you put in, and to Nicolas. I know this has been an even bigger job this year because we had such a wide range of different reports and also so many civil society reports. And as you rightly say, there's more and more emphasis from our side to really give prominence to those civil society reports. I would just say on a side note that unfortunately it has been raised several times with DESA to have the Spotlight report on an equal footing with the official reports, but there is unfortunately no consensus in the UN language amongst member states on allowing that to happen. So unfortunately, it remains that only the official report by the member states is given that kind of prominence on the UN website. But what I would say is that collectively, as the major groups and other stakeholders, we do promote all of the independent Spotlight reports, and you can find all of those on the major groups and other stakeholders website, which we'll share shortly. But now let's turn to some of our colleagues who've joined from some of the countries that were reporting last year. You've already heard a little bit about these countries, and you've heard particularly about how strong the civil society coalitions were and are in many of the VNR countries. And we are really very, very glad to have three of the strongest of those civil society partners that were reporting last year to join us and give us some insights in their own experience and what it was like from the civil society point of view. So first of all, from Zimbabwe, we had a coalition of children's organizations that was able to put together a children's scorecard led by Save the Children. And I'd like to invite Patience Makambwa to run us through that process. Patience, over to you.
Thank you, Ali. It's a pleasure to meet all of you here and to share about Zimbabwe and on how we have been successful in engaging the government and ensuring that the voices of the children are part of the VNR processes, not only a part of, but also their voices ahead regarding the implementation of the SDGs. You may go to the, I don't know, the third slide. Yes, so I'll be sharing on how we were engaging with the government and also the impact of this relationship and also on the key issues that came out of this VNR. I must start by saying I would like to acknowledge and also appreciate the analysis that has been given by Wangu and Nicolas, and also the feedback from Alexandra. It points exactly our experiences as we were partaking in the Voluntary National Review, working and supporting children in this initiative. But also we managed to push through by identifying key opportunities within the government. For example, what was critical for us was relationship building. For a long time, we had invested in this, and that also was recognized by the government as we wrote to them to say, we want to support you in this process and ensuring that the voices of children are part of this Voluntary National Review. And as part of that relationship building, it's also ensuring that you are not really political, but also understanding the politics of your country and identifying what are the key push areas that they are pushing on at a global level. For us, it was around Zimbabwe becoming a lower medium income country, and also the human rights issues. And that was an opportunity to us, but also not condoning any violations to human rights. But we were saying, you know, look, this is an opportunity to also showcase how children have been involved and their voices heard in the Voluntary National Review process. And I think you can read through as well. We put them, by writing to them, we also put them in a leadership position. It is critical to acknowledge this leadership for engagements of CSOs to be successful. Otherwise, if you are just focusing maybe on politics only, that your endeavors will not be recognized. We all know that governments do guard their political interest, and they want to ensure that the national interests are preserved, but also give them that leadership and also find opportunities within what they are driving at to push the agenda of giving out accurate or near accurate information about the situation of the implementation of SDGs from the eyes of the various constituencies that you'll be working with. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I think in the previous slide, there was an issue around the afterthought. I think this points out to what Nicolas and also Wangu have been pointing out that, there was no decisiveness by the government to push a multi-stakeholder approach to this, convening workshops and so forth, or baseline. We then had to take it up and find opportunities like I highlighted. And it is also critical to invest in the children as well, and understanding as CSOs that it's not our moment. We have our opportunity within the CSO report, but when it comes to the children's report, it is important to put the children at the forefront in terms of data collection. One child said, sometimes I will not tell you the truth of the situation unless I'm talking to another child. So it is critical to understand that this is not our moment. As we implement the scorecard, it's the children's moment, and they need to air out what they are experiencing. And this was also emphasized during the technical trainings of the CSOs, and then empowering children around this. And that government leadership also helped us in having a coordinated approach to the VNR process, child-led initiative. And our technical capacity is to save the children, not only in country, but with global connection. It also helped in putting ourselves as a CSO that has the technical capacity to allow children to engage amongst themselves on the VNR process. So you also need to approach the government with a clear strategy, a clear plan, and also with that kind of technical expertise, which may also give you a better standing with the government to say, no, Save the Children can actually do this. Sightsavers can actually focus on this. So that was what we also did. Next slide, please. And it was critical to also ensure that we are working with the structures that the government has established. There is the junior parliament in Zimbabwe and also the junior council. So they were the leads in these engagements. So we did not seem like we are diverting from the cause of the government and also national endeavors, national strategies that we have. So we supported that, and we found an opportunity in that. But also during the training, it was also critical to ensure that we make these engagements a safe space for children, which was very difficult because of that leadership again, because they were present and children know, and sometimes they were afraid to also share on their experiences. But we also emphasized around a safe space, ensuring that reporting mechanisms are available, ensuring that social workers are also present in some instances to support any other child who might have a report to make, and any other support that they may require. And for some, also, we were addressing the issue of children just being selected for the purposes of suiting maybe a national strategy, with one junior parliamentarian actually highlighting that this is their very first time to engage with other children within their constituency. So it also speaks into the VNR processes sometimes becoming a one-day event, and also issues to do with investment in all processes and procedures, even before time of reporting. You may move to the next slide. Like I highlighted that, yes, we followed the scorecard methodology, and it helped us in identifying children, and also within their diversity, but also because the process started very late, it was then difficult to cover the whole nation. I think Nicolas also indicated to this that actually 80% of children were not really engaged, if I got that correctly. So it is critical that these processes start early, and if you're leading as a CSO, you find an opportunity as early as possible so that you're able to include every other child and within their diversity. And yes, the presence of the government officials sometimes was very intimidating for the children. And we still found opportunities of ensuring that it's a safe space, and also engaging with the government to say, this is about our country as well. So we really need to be as objective as possible and not take the lead, even amongst ourselves as CSOs, that, this is the space for children. We shouldn't be here as the spokespeople. Rather, we are here to support them, to document their journeys. And we observe that when children are then empowered, they can still share their lived experiences. I think you can read some of the harrowing issues that children presented regarding their situations. Next slide. So again, those are key quotes from the government. And it was critical to identify, to observe that children could actually speak into the child rights violations that are happening within their communities. They could also speak into the corruption that they are experiencing. I think in the previous slide, they mentioned that you find someone may be accused of sexually violating a girl or a boy, then the next thing you're seeing them in the communities again. And also around the promises that were made as our government officials or leadership was getting into positions to lead, but then they are not accessing that free basic education. So these became topical, and we're very grateful that you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and there we see children living with disabilities also highlighting the challenges that they are facing as they try to access basic services, not just health, but also education, also child protection services. They still face these challenges. Next slide. And what we are grateful of is if you go into the Zimbabwe report and go to actually this first section is for children. That was commendable from our side that, they actually prioritized this. And the other thing, they did not change anything, even the issues that we thought these are very sensitive around corruption, around non-availability of data, statistics, and so forth. But still, they maintained the report as it is, which may point to political will, although there are also challenges, as highlighted by Nicolas, around domestic resource mobilization and financing for the implementation for us to attain our targets. And also we had these reports documented at provincial level, and this helped us, or this we see this as an opportunity to then follow up on these specific issues as some of our follow-up actions. Sometimes to have a national report that covers everyone, it's difficult to then track what is happening where, but we were able to then report even at a provincial level. Next slide. Yeah, I think just to sum it up, those are our key lessons learned, that it is critical to be involved in the government VNR plans, not the VNR, the Voluntary National Review process in terms of just data collection and report writing. We have to be part of the government long-term plans we have submitted, and we still have to implement some actions until the next cycle. And it is critical that we are part of all those processes. Thank you so much. Back to you, Oli.
Sorry, I did the slide jumped accidentally, but I'm sorry if we lost the very last point. But I think this has been extremely insightful, Patience. Thank you so much, and really to understand the ins and outs and the complexities of trying to bring children and young people's voices into this process. And congratulations on ensuring that those voices were included in the official report. That's a very strong example. Thank you. And of course, the slides will be available. I know that people have been asking on the chat. We'll make sure all the slides are available, the link to all of the reports, including the overall Progressing Implementation report that we're talking about today, as well as links to the various national reports. So let me pass now to Juliana, who's joining from Brazil. You've already heard quite a bit about Brazil. It's been mentioned several times as a good case study. So Juliana, there's already been a bit of a teaser for you, and we're looking forward to hearing the full story. Over to you.
Thank you, Ollie. Yeah, spoilers and great expectations. Let's hope I can live up to it. So greetings, everyone. Thank you, Ollie, and all for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure and also a privilege to address you today. As Ollie mentioned, my name is Juliana Cesar. I represent Gestos. Gestos is a Brazilian NGO that co-founded the so-spoken of civil society working group on the 2030 agenda in Brazil. And since 2017, our coalition has published the annual Spotlight Report, which is, as you know, a civil society-led review of the country's progress on the SDGs. The 2025 edition will launch next month at the High Level Political Forum, and I hope we will be together to discuss it then. Today, however, as Ollie mentioned, I've been asked to speak about multi-stakeholder governance, and this is actually a cornerstone for the 2030 agenda success. And so let me give you some examples of how Brazil has been addressing this issue. We are, after all, 7 years from the deadline, and the evidence that we have is clear. Our overall progress is lagging, inequalities are deepening, the trust in multilateralism eroding does not even begin to describe it. So these challenges, let's try to be hopeful at least, so to see if they also can present some opportunities. This is possible if we strengthen how we govern, let's say, the agenda together. Brazil has a story that underscores both the risks of backsliding in the compromise and the commitments, and also the power of collective action. After the country's many political crises and impeachment, let's say coup d'etat, after all those facts, they steered the government away from the SDGs. The 2030 agenda was actively fought by the government, denied, and fought against by the government. It was Brazilian civil society that actually kept the agenda alive in the country. We disseminated its principles, we integrated the SDGs into our policy advocacy, and we try to hold the governments accountable, even when the public institutions falter to do so. Our civil society working group has been instrumental in this effort. Through the tools like the Spotlight Report, we could monitor the progress, or also expose the many setbacks that we had, and also push for evidence-based reforms. But our role did not end there, and it's still ongoing. After the new federal government step on, like Lula, we had a recommitment to the SDGs, and this offered some hope. So one of the first measures is the Lula government revived participatory planning of our budget and our pluri-annual plan. In Brazil, we have a pluri-annual planning, both for budgeting and also for public policies. It is revised annually, of course, but we have every 4 years. So right now we are on the one that was established for 2024 to 2027. This participatory planning had the inputs of over 34,000 people and more than 1.5 million online votes. It was you could participate either in person and also online submitting proposals. The outcomes which constituted this pluriannual plan, they were also linked to the 2030 agenda, so that we have this multi-year planning of the country incorporated how it contributes to the SDGs. So it's another way for us to keep track of what the government is doing and how it influences how we tag along to the agenda. As Nicolas mentioned, sorry, let me go back to another post. And sorry for Ollie, because he only has a few slides with photos. So to your left, you have one of the big meetings that you have for the PPA, as we call this participatory planning of the agenda. So going from this PPA, we also had the reactivation of the National SDG Commission. That's the next slide, Ollie. We have a photo as well. It's only a photo, I'm sorry. So after reviving this, also after a lot of pressure from civil society and lots of political incidents, the National SDG Commission was reactivated, and it's a large one. It's almost 100 people together. It brings together civil society and the government as well. Civil society has 42 seats, just to give you an example. And those seats were selected through an open competition. This is a huge step forward. It exemplifies, let's say, how these institutionalized multi-stakeholder practices can foster advancement for the 2030 agenda. It has a mandate that spans for policy formulation, SDG monitoring, and advisory support. And it's also a direct link between civil society and the Secretariat General of the Presidency, which is also the body that oversees the participatory planning process. Through this national commission, which we call it Keynote in Portuguese, civil society has influenced international advocacy. We have collaborated, and that's a very important thing about the commission as well. We had the opportunity to collaborate with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or UN resolution and other agendas as CSW, CPD, FFD, as was mentioned. So we had to contribute to the positions of the country on those issues. And we also had the possibility of collaborating in terms of the Spotlight report. In the next slide, you see two photos, one of the launch of the Brazilian VNR, and civil society was there. The one in red and white stripes is me, next to the minister and the first lady, so it was a high-level engagement. And to your right is the launch of the civil society Spotlight report as well, which was done at the building of the Presidency of the Republic and with 4 or 5 ministers, so also a high-level event with high participatory presence. As Wanda mentioned, the Spotlight report was used as a benchmark for Brazil's 2023 VNR, but we still have challenges at the National Commission. We have limited human resources. We still do not have dedicated budget. We still have uneven subnational representations. So that's also a space for progress. Also for progress, let's say that civil society tried to cover all bases. So even in spaces like the Conservative National Congress in Brazil, we have carved out footholds. If we go back to the second slide, Ollie, when we had the PPA, the photo on the right is the photo of one of the sessions of the Parliamentary Front for the FDG. So in the National Congress, we have many fronts, and civil society was able to promote the institutionalization of a parliamentary front for the SDGs, comprising both the lower chamber and the high chamber. And you use that space to demystify the agenda and advocate for integration into budgeting and planning. We still have some challenges because of powerful economic interests, especially agribusiness. We have some setbacks in the Congress, but you use the parliamentary front as a space to counter that and also to try to build some bridges. Other other space to be watched for in terms of accountability, where it still remains weak, is that, for example, I mentioned the production by Brazil of the first voluntary national review last year. It was the first since 2017, when the country really stepped aside of the Twitter agenda. With the new government, they wanted to go back, and the first commitment was to produce this VNR last year. A new one will be presented next year, and the federal government's already organizing its production. But there's one thing that civil society is demanding is for civil society to be incorporated into the actual production of the VNR. We don't want it only to reply, to answer to what the civil society report, the Spotlight report presents, but also we want to be integrated into the actual production of it, as it happened before. So another challenge of the VNR is that although it acknowledged some challenges like rising inequality, the country has failed to respond to these challenges. Our conservative Congress that I just mentioned is an almost unsurmountable force in disputes views with us, and even with the broad and not very reliable coalition that comprises the federal government, the Congress is a factor that has hindered progress in Brazil. So we advocate also for measures that will preserve the capacity of the federal government to institutionalize public policies to address the agenda. Since we think that we have much to progress in this, and we also want to be committed to deeper analysis into the VNR. Sometimes, as it was mentioned, the countries will try to focus on what they have good going on and not shed some light into the challenges. That's why also we call our report the Spotlight report. We think that we should have some mechanisms to formalize independent civil society reviews for VNR, and ensure then that civil society organizations will not only be consulted, but also embedded into the committees that draft them. We took those strides with the VNR, then dialoguing with the Spotlight report, but for the next year, we would like to co-lead the analysis. And this isn't unprecedented, at least for Brazil. It worked, for example, for the UNGAS AIDS reporting. Civil society at first made the shadow reports, and with the progress of the dialogue with the government, civil society and the government made one single report together. And when we had disagreeing views, both were mentioned in the actual report. So for me, that's the golden standard of reporting. Anyways, I think that my time is probably up. I'd like to say that the 2030 agenda remains our best compass, but its promises, it hinges on inclusive governance and also rigorous accountability. Brazil has demonstrated that political will can reignite a process, but civil society must remain both a partner and also a watchdog of the agenda. As we near 2030, it's by the corner right now. So let's try to keep honoring the agenda spirit of governing together and ensuring that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Muito obrigado, Juliana. As half Brazilian, I'm very excited to see Brazil back in this space and really driving forward such a creative approach and such an inclusive approach. Thank you for really giving us some very clear insights and also some of the inner workings of how the various mechanisms are coming together in Brazil, to see whether other countries might also adopt some of the same approach in terms of a multi-stakeholder commission and so on. So thank you so much. We only have a few minutes left, but we have one more key speaker to hear from. So I'm looking forward to welcoming Arjun Bhattarai from the NGO Forum of Nepal. Arjun, over to you.
Thank you, Oli. I don't want to go details because the colleagues already share more about the perspective, like, the BNR and all. So can you go the next slide? So I can go. Okay, so we have very strong one civil society mechanism, and then this mechanism we established in 2016, and we have so 17 goal conveners, different civil society like thematic federation, they engage in as a convener, and we have 34 co-conveners. So, and there is a multi-stakeholder platform, so recognized with the UN system, government, because we invited the private sector, UN systems, and the international NGOs. So this is very strong mechanism. So and this mechanism represent a different government mechanism. There's a high level mechanism under the prime minister. So also we are the member of that mechanism, and also there's a thematic working committee under the National Planning Commission. So this Nepal SDG Forum member of that mechanism. So because of this strong civil society mechanism, so it's we are engaging in different government procedures, and of course we are doing ourselves different activity in the ground. Next slide. Okay, so our major role, achieving 2030 agenda and monitoring SDGs, and of course this structure we utilize, even the do the VNR. So we empower and inform the our members and stakeholders. So we raise the awareness, we capacity building, we organize different training and different kinds of activity towards capacity building. And we involve different kinds of stakeholders, including young people, children, LGBTIQ youth, humans, and larger different community members. They engage in different procedure of SDG. So this year we do also child-led VNR, youth-led VNR, LGBTIQ-led VNR, women-led VNR. So themselves they produce reports. So we engage a lot of other stakeholders. So this is a very important aspect we do in during our SDG mobilization and also the VNR process. So we do the different kinds of actions. So we do the lobby and advocacy, and we mobilize the peoples, and we organize the campaign across the countries. So this is very important to showcase our effort also in sometime we come in a even bigger, larger place to showcase our mobilization and all. So we do research and publication, and also we regularly do the monitoring evaluation. And for that, we always encourage CS enabling environment for SDG implementation. So civil society is space is shrinking across the globe, and also in my country, in Nepal, civic society space shrinking. So we are engaging a lot of to enhance the civic space for the implementing 2030 agenda. So we produce different kinds of booklet and annual reports, and also it is in local language and of course the international language. Next slide. Okay, so basically to aim to engaging VNR to build the common understanding and to create the awareness on SDG. So and also to develop the civil society perspective in SDG, and also to analyze the mechanism, progress, trend, and gaps on the SDG. So we do regularly, and we also prepare some recommendation, and also we give the compliment to the government's review and promote the environment for the area implementation of the 2030 agenda. And also we always promoting people scorecard, which is very popular in Nepal. So we utilize that people scorecard to collect the data, and also this year we share our data to the government, and the government highly recognize our people scorecard data. So it's very interesting. Also I am also in the task force member of the government VNR officially task force. So this is very, I share the people scorecard data, and they utilize also their data to to prepare their reports. Next slide. Okay, so we have a couple of we said 12 step strategy. So we did regular consultation with the major group and stakeholders across the country. So this is a very important first step. Before, at least 3 months before, we organize each year when we do the BNR, or even the national report each year we produce. So also we collected issue and information from the community and CSO and multi stakeholders, and also we prepare the CSO BNR report guideline. We form the high level expert team And also we also selected some thematic area in 2024, like Dalit cluster, women, indigenous youth, LGBTQI, farmers, senior citizens, disabled children, and others. So I think we give a like LNOB perspective. So, and we engage in different these thematic areas, peoples and themselves they engage to collect the data, and at least we give like some capacity building on like in people scorecard, and they themselves they collect the data on their sectoral data, and they provide it for like for a spotlight report and other and like government VNR report. Next slide. Okay, then we collected the information from the people's scorecard, people's scorecard from the major group and stakeholders. So we translated also in Nepali language because many people they use a local language, and also we collected data in English and Nepali both way, and we compile the data, and we review the reports and information from the national and international CSO and government about the VNR. So also it's a regular activity, and we prepare the draft recommendation, share to the CSO, NGO, and major group stakeholders. So we consulted, VNR drafting team of the government Nepal. So we regularly, the one process that like, I was the team leader of the like civil society. On other hand, also I am in the representing the government VNR task force, and also we frequently, meeting with the government stakeholders and government task force members, and we share our perspective, not final report, because in initially drafting time we engage in that the process. So I think the very engaging process in 2024 we apply with the government. So we are very happy, at least in the government recognize that as civil society in the major stakeholder drafting the VNR of Nepal. And we prepare the recommendation and hand over the government, and also on behalf of Nepali civil society, and we prepare and launch the final spotlight report, and also we share the government and UN agency and major group and stakeholder, and also we share our report in official session of government in HLPF also. This is the opportunity also government provided, and also government recognize our effort during the HLPF session. They share our contribution and also recognize the civil society. And these are some photographs so engaging the government and also the stakeholders. So next slide. Okay, so some positive aspect in the government review the progress with the baseline database, at least in the 2024, and also the better CSO engagement in the process, and recognize CSO in HLPF, and comprehensive report we prepare, and also the collaboration and joint effort for the VNR. I think I already shared that with the government and the other stakeholders. Next slide. Next slide, Oli. Okay, some recommendation for the VNR. I think some country doing like next VNR. So I like to suggest. So first is very better to like sensitize and capacity building of CSO is very important, because many CSO they don't know about the VNR process, and increase the participation of all stakeholders, including marginalized sections of community and local government as possible. So if you engage the local government, it will be more relevant VNR, because we engage the many local government, and we engage in the voluntary local review process. So I think it's better to engage the local government and include the past recommendation of the VNR. So I also analyze the past VNR recommendation and establish the mechanism VNR for the effective implementation of the recommendation from the HLPF and VNR, and develop the IT-based monitoring and data tracking system. So we utilize the people scorecard as a database. So we share that and at least in a Google Sheet, and then we collect the data. So I think it's a very best utilized model. So use the people scorecard toolkit to recognize the CSO contribution to SDG, and tracking the real picture of the progress. Because why the government asks always, civil society always talking, like more, this always said that you are, more not database, you are talking a lot. So this year, we share the people scorecard model, and they recognize. So I think it's a very recognized model. So we need to push this model in other country. So prepare VNR guideline, and also share the draft report to stakeholder for the feedback. Increase the participation of CSO official HLPF and VNR process. Organize voluntary local review before the VNR. I think we did some voluntary local review before the VNR, and I think it is a very best practice, and then we included in our VNR process. So I think this is my slide, last slide, Oli.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you, and I'm sorry that time is running out, but
yeah.
We know that you have a very strong model in Nepal as well, and I think it's interesting that you specifically mention here the local level and the voluntary local review. As Nicolas highlighted in the slides earlier, that's something we've seen a real increase in the localization of the VNRs and the reporting on the SDGs. And that's something we would like to explore more in the future. So we hope we can go a bit deeper on the local level as we go forward. So thank you again to you, Arjun, and thank you to all three of our excellent national partners. So colleagues, we are a little bit over time, and I apologize that we have been slightly overrunning, but I would like to give some final remarks to our colleagues from Forus and from Save the Children, who I hope are with us. Jyotsna.
Hi.
Yes, hi, Jyotsna. Okay, wonderful. And we also, and Lily from Save the Children. Perhaps, Jyotsna, would you like to go first? Do you have some reflections that you would like to share in terms of some closing remarks?
No, I'm very glad. Thank you so much, Oli, for this great session, and I'm really happy to hear all of that. The case studies from our partners and members is like, seeing the real case studies, and that's coming from the ground, especially on the localization or especially on the role of youth. I think these are amazing and very 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 inspiring. So I would just say that this report is truly a civil society led report, and coming from them presenting the real ground level stories, and I really hope that we are able to make a real changes. The report reaches our policymakers just ahead of the HLPF. And I would strongly suggest to please read the report, and please share this as much as you can with especially the policymakers, because I would really want them to read this story, because it's not only UN and member state that works, it's a lot of work that's done by the civil society at the ground level, and that's something that needs to be heard and seen. So that's all. Thank you so much, Oli. Over to you.
Thank you, Jyotsna. Thank you to you and your team and all of the different national partners also involved through Forus. It's been great collaboration, and we look forward to working with you also now in the build up to the next HLPF. So Lily, you have the final remarks.
Yeah, I thought I would maybe share. We've learned quite a lot in the last 10 years in the implementation of the SDGs and the 2030 agenda, but maybe some reflections on looking ahead for the next 5 years. I think four points. The first is that partnerships are going to be really critical in delivering progress for us. I think it's never been more timely and important for civil society to band together. It's not just closing of civic space around the world, but it's also a rollback on rights, but also a rollback on the fundamental principles underpinning the 2030 agenda, such as the pledge to leave no one behind. So it's never been more crucial for civil society to hold government's feet to the fire. The second point I want to make is around prioritization. So where we can make meaningful progress, sort of prioritizing integrated solutions like social protection and tackling root causes is where we should be focusing our energy on. Fragmented approaches, for example, seeing a particular SDG as the purview of a specific department or ministry, has made limited progress. We also know now that based on the data available, that on current trends, many of the SDGs will not be met for all groups by 2030. But we also know that progress can be made with the right political will. Therefore, I think prioritization is going to be key in the next 5 years. We also know that financing remains the biggest bottleneck to achieving the SDG. The SDG financing gap continues to grow, right? And given current ODA landscape, private sector funding and innovative fundings such as green bonds are going to become increasingly important. But it's very critical for civil society and governments to push for accountability and impact, as well as reforms to the international financial architecture. And finally, I think what we've seen over the last 10 years is that how we implement the SDGs is just as important. And so I really urge for us to continue to put a human rights and a leave no one behind lens in the next 5 years, making sure we reach the furthest behind first. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Lily. So we started with human rights from the Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and now we close also with a strong rallying cry for human rights from Save the Children. And thank you so much to you, Lily, for such clear recommendations for the future. Thank you again to everyone who's been able to join us today. Thank you to all of our speakers, all of our panelists, all of our partners. We really look forward to continuing to engage with you in the build-up now to the next HLPF. The reports will all be very shortly on the website that you see on your screen now, and we'll be sending out links so that you can have a look at the full report. You can also get in touch with us. We'll share the video, we'll share the slides, and we look forward to keeping in touch. So thank you once more to everyone, and hope to see you in the build-up to the next HLPF. Thank you. And goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.